Hello class 9, this is Meena ma'am welcoming you to the English literature classroom. We will start with The Merchant of Venice written by William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was born in 1564. He was England's national poet. The world's greatest dramatist, was also nicknamed as the Bard of Avon. He wrote 38 plays and 154 sonnets. You might be familiar with some of his famous works like Hamlet, Macbeth, Julius Caesar, The Tempest, Romeo and Juliet, Much Ado About Nothing, etc. His plays can be divided roughly into three categories: tragedies, comedies, and histories. It is necessary to note that in this context of Shakespearean plays, comedy does not necessarily mean it is funny. Rather, it is one with happy ending. A tragedy, on the other hand, is one with unhappy ending. Unlike comedy and tragedy, history plays were about the lives of English monarchs who ruled between the 12th and 16th centuries. A small introduction on the drama The Merchant of Venice. It's a 16th century play in which a merchant of Venice named Antonio defaults on a large loan provided by a Jewish moneylender, Shylock. It is believed to have been written between 1596 and 1599. The major and minor characters include Shylock, Portia, Antonio, Bassanio, the Duke of Venice, Gratiano, Nereza, Lorenzo, Jessica, Salarino, Salanio, Lancelot Gobbo, the Prince of Morocco, the Prince of Aragon, Old Gobbo, Tubal, Dr. Bellario, Balthazar. Each major and minor character has significant role to play in Shakespeare's drama. Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice is set in Renaissance Venice with a few scenes in a fictional Italian town called Belmont. The setting is important. Venice was one of the wealthiest towns in Europe, as it was right on the sea with excellent shipping facilities for trading with the East. Belmont is highly feminine, dominated by Portia's character. It's a wealthy city. It's a fairy tale world that Shakespeare imagines to be of heart and romance. It's a happy and harmonious place. Venice is a wealthy commercial town with a lot of businessmen, male-dominated, business-oriented, where Jessica, Shylock's daughter, is the only female found. Shakespeare's plays always include plots, the main plot and the subplots. The main plot is the Bond story, which I will brief later. The subplots include the casket story, the ring episode, the Lorenzo Jessica episode. The Bond story is the main plot. There is a central character, Antonio, who is a rich merchant. His best friend, Bassanio, happens to ask him for some money, for he needs it for going to Belmont, to participate in the casket ceremony, to marry Portia, who is a rich and beautiful lady. Antonio is a merchant, so he invested his every single ducat in the business and at present is not able to lend money to Bassanio. Thus, Antonio asks him to borrow money from someone on his name. That is, he would be the guarantor for his loan. So Bassanio proceeds to Shylock to borrow money. Shylock was always hated and insulted by Antonio in Rialto, which happened to be the business center in Venice. The reasons were that Shylock charged high interests on the loans lent, and Antonio hated this Jewish moneylender, and his race. Shylock wants to grab this opportunity to take revenge on Antonio the moment he comes to know that Antonio will be the guarantor for Bassanio. He asks Antonio to sign a bond which mentions that if Antonio fails to repay the 3,000 ducats, that is, the borrowed amount, he will rightfully cut a pound of flesh from any part of Antonio's body. Now I will give you a brief note on the main theme of The Merchant of Venice, that is, appearance and reality. This theme is depicted in the Lottery of the Caskets. The Prince of Morocco was attracted by the gold casket, while the Prince of Aragon was misled by his ego and selected the silver one. Their judgments were based on the outward appearances, so they failed. Bassanio, on the other hand, guided by true love and sincerity, chooses correctly the lead casket. Whenever you learn a literature piece, you will have to know the significance of the title. Why is the name given to so and so play? Thus, there is a need to justify the title. Shakespeare carefully selected the titles of his plays. His tragedies and historic plays are named after the central character of the play. His comedies, on the other hand, are named after a weak and passive character. Similar is the case with The Merchant of Venice. It has been named after Antonio, the Merchant of Venice, a weak and a passive character suffering from nameless melancholy. It has been a controversial issue as to who exactly is the merchant in the title, Antonio or Shylock. In the play, Antonio has been referred to again and again as the merchant and Shylock as the Jew or the cruel moneylender. Shylock, though a strong and dominant character, has no qualities of a hero of a comedy. He is revengeful and malicious. On the other hand, Antonio is kind-hearted and generously lends money to others. He is a devoted friend of Bassanio. He enjoys a good reputation in Venice. Thus, Antonio is the real merchant of the play. The conflict in the play has its origin in the ill-conceived bond story of Antonio. This leads to the Caskets episode and the Lorenzo Jessica episode, and it finally resolved in the Ring episode, bringing in peace and joy. Antonio is the main focus of the entire play. His fortunes and misfortunes become the cause of joy and sorrow. We will see the brief summary of Act 1, Scene 1. The opening scene gives the readers introductory information about the play. In this scene, Shakespeare acquaints us with the elements of the plot as well as with the characters and atmosphere of the play. Antonio, the famous merchant, is in a melancholic mood for some unknown reason. His friends suggest different causes for his sadness and try to rouse him from it, but in vain. His dearest friend Bassanio expresses to him his desire to win Portia, a rich heiress of Belmont. He seeks a loan from Antonio to visit Belmont and prove himself a worthy suitor to Portia. However, all the money that Antonio possesses is tied up in his ships at sea and he has no cash in hand. So he advises Bassanio to take a loan from a moneylender using his good name as credit. Thus, the love story of Bassanio and Portia gets linked with the bond story of Antonio and Shylock.